matter what organization you work in, people can probably definitely identify good leaders and not so good leaders. But I definitely had a good mix, and I recognize, hey, what is good leadership? What is effective leadership? Leaders that are genuinely interested, the people, right? And someone that works for them, or their subordinates are not just a number, right? So I recognize that that's really important.
What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today, because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
In case you missed it,
my purpose professionally is definitely to help female entrepreneurs, specifically work with, whenever possible, female entrepreneurs in their prime. And you may wonder, what is in their prime? That's not it.
Available everywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome back to Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact hero, and you are in for a treat. Our guest today lives to make change and to make a difference in the world through leadership and advocacy. He's dynamic, informative, and enthusiastic as a globally recognized speaker, award-winning psychologist, and an accomplished scholar. He's an expert in human behavior and fostering inclusive cultures and bolstering psychological resilience. He's an award-winning psychologist who loves assisting teams boost their bottom line by fostering innovation and optimizing effectiveness. He enraptures audiences as a speaker while accelerating organizational excellence through crucial needs such as inclusion and mental wellness. Very, very important things. He's just an all-around great human being and someone who is driving meaningful change as the CEO of RC Warner Consulting. Please welcome the authentic, genuine, and memorable Dr. Ryan C. Warner.
Hey, everybody. I'm so glad to be here today.
Yeah, welcome to the program.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you very much for hopping on. So, one of the biggest things that we like to say is that anyone has the opportunity to be a social impact hero and to make a difference in the world. And sometimes people, they do it kind of here and there, but you're someone that seems to have a passion for that wants to help others and drive change. So I'm going to ask you the question that I always ask individuals on the program. And, we invited you on the show because we see you as someone that is impacting the lives of others and making a difference in the world and having an impact. But my question to you is, do you see yourself as a hero?
Wow, so that's interesting. I never view myself as a hero per se, but just someone who's living in their purpose. And that really guides everything I do. I feel like everyone's here for a reason. And, my reason that I feel like I'm here is to make change one person at a time. So that's everything that I do. I wake up every day and say, how can I influence, meaningful change in someone or organization today, and I try to, live by that in everything that I do.
And that's very noble. And I, kind of similar to how I view my days as well. So, every hero, and, whether you consider yourself a hero or not, we'll try to convince you by the end of the show, because it is an acronym where, we'll go through the letters, but in terms of where you are today. So every hero has their origin story of how they got started, how, they found their purpose or created their purpose in life, if you will. So how did that happen for you? Were you always someone that was interested in change, or how did you get to doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, great question. So for me, it was definitely not a linear process. When I was growing up, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was passionate about sports. In high school, I played every sport you can imagine: track, cross country, basketball, football, volleyball. And, I knew that I was interested in athletics. I knew I was interested in health. So when I sought out my bachelor's degree, I was like, hey, I don't know exactly what I want to be when I grow up, but I want to do something involving health and the well-being of others. So I was like, hey, maybe I should be a physical therapist. So I was part-time physical therapy assistant during my bachelor's degree. And when I would help individuals rehabilitate physically, when they came in and injured their arm or their leg, or they experienced a disability, I would help them go through a different physical exercise each day. But they would say, hey, Ryan, I really appreciate you going through these exercises with me and guiding me to rehabilitate. But really, I really appreciate you listening. I had a hard day today at work, or I'm experiencing issues in my marriage or my relationship, or I'm having trouble at school. And they would convey these challenges to me. And I would just listen to them. And I would, nod my head. I would empathize. I would validate their experience. And they would tell me, hey, you should try to be a psychologist, right? Because you're a phenomenal listener. And I really appreciate the emotional support that you provided. So then that really shifted how I viewed well-being. At first, I only looked at it physical well-being, but then I saw how significant our emotional and psychological well-being is, to our overall health. So that ultimately convinced me to seek a master's degree in rehabilitation psychology, then onward to a PhD in counseling psychology, to be a psychologist, to help individuals enhance their emotional and psychological wellness. And right then and there, I recognized that this was something that that came so naturally to me. I didn't really have to try that hard to be a good listener, to guide people to enhance their psychological, emotional health. And right then and there, I was like, hey, this is my passion, this is my purpose. And from there, it just grew. And started a business and engaged in consulting and speaking, talking about wellness and diversity, and also being able to reach millions of people across the globe through, just the influence that I've been able to make. So ultimately, long story short, there wasn't a linear process at all. But in turn, I was able to step into my purpose to make a change.
So would you say, and thank you for sharing, because I find it fascinating, kind of that path that people take, that hero's journey, if you will, that, like you said, not linear, but it's amazing how things happen is, your passion, your love for one thing, for sports and athletics, and I shared that when I was younger and actually still do, led to your passion in, psychology and everything else that you became. So I'm curious, when you were younger in sports, because one thing in myself, I look back to my time, and I did a lot of the same sports that you did, but I look back to my time in sports, and I did always have like that leadership role, or, was kind of a leader on the field, or, captain on the court, however you want to look at it. So was that a part of who you were back then, or was that something that evolved later after you, developed those listening skills and, and really being able to understand human behavior?
Great question. So when I was younger, I was actually very scared to lead others. I was scared of public speaking. I didn't really feel comfortable at all. So I don't know if I view myself as a leader back then, but when I look back at it, I always wanted to do something different. I always wanted to, I felt that, I had a unique, disabilities and just unique interests, and I found myself wanting to step away from, what the crowd really does. But I never really thought of myself as a leader back then. But as I began to get more experience and enhance my confidence and, try new different experiences, ultimately I've been able to grow into that confidence as a leader. And then in the different roles that, I've been able to engage in. And then also I was in the military. So I was an active duty military psychologist. And in the military, they train you how to be an effective leader. So right after I graduated with my PhD, I was in charge of entire military installation, and I was the director of psychological health, which means I was the main psychologist consultant for the entire base. And right then and there, I had to step in the leader. I didn't have a chance. I didn't have any choice, right? So that forced me to continue to grow and develop and enhance my confidence even further. And in turn, I was like, hey, I want to start my own business. So I also learned how to be a leader in that regard as well. But the way I look at leadership is anyone who can influence change. So it's not necessarily a position or a role that you hold within a company or organization, but it's more about, are you passionate about influencing change within others and within systems? So yeah, that's continued to develop for me over time. Just my view of what is leadership, what does it look like, and also just my confidence with that role.
I'm with you there on, the definition of a leader, because I believe anyone, just like I believe anyone can change the world and impact others on a daily basis, I believe anyone can be a leader on a daily basis, if they choose and impact others, in a positive way. Then when you were kind of thrust into that role, that leadership role where you had to learn to be a leader in the military, is that where the aptitude for public speaking came, or were you working on it prior to that already?
So I dabbled in it just a little bit. I remember I engaged in a competition. It was called the 3-minute thesis. And I had 3 minutes to convey my dissertation during my PhD program. And it was a competition, and you get a monetary reward. And I was like, hey, let me just try it out. Let me step outside my comfort zone. And I was runner-up. And there was a lot of individuals who competed. And I was like, hey, if I can be runner-up, and people really came up to me and said, hey, you should have won that. You did a phenomenal job of being able to convey very complex research in only 3 minutes, right? That was phenomenal. You should be a speaker. And right then and there, I was like, hey, I think I'm kind of good at this, so I intentionally engaged in opportunities after that. And then I started to get paid for it. And then it grew from there, So again, not a linear process, just me trying new things. And in turn, I recognized I was very passionate for it and also had a knack for influencing others in my talks.
And I think there's a good lesson to be learned by anyone that's listening, is that, it all starts with taking action and kind of stepping outside that comfort zone a little bit, just trying something new, trying something new and seeing what happens. What is your thesis is on what? Because you said complex information. So what is it?
So my dissertation was on microaggressions, specifically towards Black college students. And right then and there, that helped me develop my bread and butter. So right now, I do a lot of consultation for organizations to mitigate the impact of microaggressions within the workplace. So it just naturally led into what I do full time now. And that's one of by far, my most requested workshops and seminars is how to mitigate microaggressions, how to respond to microaggressions, which are subtle, covert forms of discrimination directed towards marginalized populations. And they happen each and every day, and sometimes we don't realize it, and it impacts our team dynamics and our workplace culture. So I go into organizations and help them improve their workplace culture so everyone feels included, no matter what background they come from. So,
yeah, which is super important in today's workplace. And I did watch a video where you were talking about that, so I just didn't know that was your dissertation. But yeah, very, very, very interesting. So I want to go back to kind of that development of leadership. So you're in the military. Obviously you're responsible for a lot of individuals, right? For overseeing, the psychological well-being for a lot of individuals. How did that, you said that, your kind of your current definition of leadership, how did your definition of leadership evolve over the years? Was it always about impact, in those early days, or how did it evolve?
So during past experiences, not just in the military, but other experiences as well, I recognize what are not good leaders. What are the qualities of leaders that are ineffective? Okay, leaders that are not empathetic, right? Leaders that really don't focus on transformative change. They're all about making themselves look better, right? So I saw a lot of that just in my past experiences, just in part-time roles that I was in, and I recognized what I did not want to be. Okay. And in turn, that helped me look more into and do more research about empathetic leadership, transformative leadership, right? What does leadership really look like? What does it really mean? How do we, lift all tides? How do we ensure that everyone feels included within the workplace, right? And then also what systems and policies, right, do leaders need to recognize so they can shift to enhance workplace culture? So just my past experiences, I found out what I did not want to be, as a leader. And in turn, that motivated me to, make a positive difference. Because we spend most of our lives at work, right? And nobody wants to go to work and feeling that their voice, does not matter and they're not included and, that they're just doing it for a paycheck, right? Everybody wants to feel fulfilled. Everyone wants to feel that they belong, right? So I want to be better, right, for the individuals that I lead.
It's interesting how you share that you learn from the ways not to do it, because I think so often we learn that way, but we don't realize it. We don't put a name to it. We don't realize that, you see. Maybe sometimes a good example, I guess, would be like in parenting. You're like, oh yeah, my parents did this. I'm never going to do that for my kids. Or, I didn't want to, I don't want to be a parent that did that or did that. I know I did some of that, in raising my daughters. But I think there's a lot of other opportunities where that just kind of happens naturally and we don't think about it. But you were conscious of it, which is, I'm sure that had an impact on you being able to translate that into being a more effective leader.
Yeah.
So would you say your time in the military that you had more of the, without throwing anyone under the bus, that you had more of the good leaders or the not so good leaders?
There was a mix, so no matter what organization you work in, people can probably definitely identify good leaders and not so good leaders. But I definitely had a good mix, and I recognize, hey, what is good leadership? What is effective leadership? Leaders that are genuinely interested in the people, right? And they're someone that works for them, or their subordinates are not just a number, right? So I recognize that that's really important. Recognizing it's a people industry, no matter what industry you're in, because you need people, right, to complete the mission or the goal at hand. Okay, if you actually treat them like a person, like an individual, and genuinely care about them, right, then they will ultimately work harder, to fulfill that mission or goal at hand, right? So sometimes we feel like it's so simple, but I've seen so many instances of individuals just being treated as a number, being treated that they're disposable, right? And in turn, that just creates a toxic workplace, right? So, but yeah, to answer your question, I definitely had a mix.
And there's probably still a mix. I would say that in my my 20 years in corporate and over the past decade of helping build a couple other startup companies and everything, that what I've seen is that it's shifting, that it used to be kind of that old school mentality of that like top down leadership, you're just a number, it's really shifted over the past decade to be more about people centered and emotional intelligence and transformative change, some of the things that you've talked about, today already, Ryan, so I don't know if you could say that maybe it was some of those older leaders that were the ones that tended to lean towards some of the less than favorable attributes, and some of the younger ones were, or maybe it was a mixed bag. I mean, what would you say?
Yeah, I don't think leadership discriminates based on age or experience. I mean, there could be definitely toxic leaders at all different levels. Okay. But yeah, recognizing that sometimes, we jump into leadership roles and we may not be trained how to actually be a leader. Right. Sometimes we feel like, oh, I have experience, so now that makes me, leader as I progress. But I think just at all different levels, there's definitely a mix out there. So everyone would benefit from leadership development and being intentional, so they can continue to be more effective.
Yeah, I guess the differentiating factor is, you being intentional, got to put in the work, like anything, right? You're going to have better results if you put in the work. I did see a lot of examples of what you were talking about when early on in my career in sales in healthcare, because there was always, the superstar salesperson, and they'd get the promotion to be the sales manager, and they didn't know what they were doing as a leader. They were just good as a performer, individual contributor and performer, but they didn't really know what they were doing as a leader. And thankfully, I did work for some large corporations that were very focused on training and development and leadership and building leaders and having the right culture. So, they recognized the importance of it, and those folks got quickly educated, I would say, or, the bad ones weeded out and the good ones, taking their place. But what, you talked on purpose very early on, and the H in hero is that a hero honors their purpose, because it's, purpose is what defines you, who you are, how you show up in the world, the foundation of what you do on a daily basis. And it sounds like you are honoring your purpose on a daily basis in what you do, right? Whether it's a workshop or a speaking engagement or anything like that. Would you agree?
Yes, and I would also say that I'm passionate about educating and coaching others. I really enjoy being a mentor. I really love when people reach out to me and say, hey, I want to learn from you. I want to maybe be in your position in the future, right? How do I start a business? What are some, barriers that you've experienced? How can I, be more effective, right, as a speaker? Yeah? So I love just, taking people under my wing. I actually started an internship program within my company, and I train students, I train individuals who are interested in similar work as consultants, as those who want to influence change around the globe. And also that helps fuel my passion and purpose as well. So not just directly with my clients, but also those that I mentor, coach, and lead that way.
It's funny, you didn't even know it, Ryan, but you just hit on the E of hero by engages, others in your mission, by sharing it with others and allowing them to understand what you've accomplished and how to do it, essentially. So mentorship and internship. I also mentor and work with interns as well. So we have that similar area that we focus on. One of the reasons I wanted to start mentoring is that I've seen the value of mentorship on the other side, being the mentee for me. So did you have did you have good mentors in your life that helped to mold and shape you?
Oh, definitely. And I still have phenomenal mentors to this day. And I wouldn't be here in the position I'm at right now talking to you if I didn't have those mentors, right? So I think sometimes when we think of mentorship, we feel like sometimes it has to be formal, but I have a lot of informal mentors that I may not talk to that frequently, but they have been monumental, in guiding me in a certain direction. I remember I never even thought about, for instance, seeking a PhD until one of my advisors was like, hey, you should get your master's degree and maybe think about your PhD after. And if they didn't plant that seed, I never even would have thought about it. I had another mentor that said, hey, if you want to be a leader, you should maybe join the military, just short term, just to, get your career trajectory off to a strong start. They'll actually train you how to be an effective leader. Again, planting the seed, right? And then fast forward, I was able to be, very successful in the military. So, for those, that just informally mentored me and dropped that seed and helped me, continue to motivate me and just recognize the possibilities out there, that's just priceless. So I'm so grateful to have those individuals in my life.
And you have to be open to it. So it sounds like you were open to the suggestions, to the advice. You were open to listening, and I think part of that comes with their position in your life. There, you see them as a mentor, you respect them, you honor them. Maybe they're what they accomplished, wherever they are. But for a lot of people, is that I know a lot of people get challenged by that. There's people that I've worked with, that they've struggled in that area, or maybe there's that law of familiarity where they don't want to take advice from someone because they're too close, and they're like, oh, well, how do they know what's best for me and everything? So what would you say to folks that are listening that they're not the best at receiving that advice or hearing that advice? Because it sounds like you were, and it served you well, right? It served you well in life and your career. So what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I would say try to be as open as possible and get as much data as possible. So you don't necessarily have to go with everything a mentor is telling you to do, right? But if you have multiple people telling you the same thing, I always like to say, hey, they're probably right. You should probably do whatever all those people are telling you to do, right? Especially if they're successful, especially if they, are people who you look up to, who you want to be like, right? When you quote unquote grow up. So I think that that's what I've been able to do, because I have mentors from all different industries, not just in the consulting type of, arena, but also I have business, mentors. I have mentors to, help me with finances. I have mentors to help me with legal, things like that, So you're recognizing that just get as much data as possible. And you can't do this by yourself. Okay. So no matter how much sometimes we feel like, hey, we can be successful alone and we have the expertise and knowledge, we always can grow better when others uplift us and we work together. So whether that be just picking the brains of others that you look up to, whether that be partnering with them in different projects, that's always going to help you, continue to, elevate, your success even further.
And it's so true is that, we can go farther together, right? That we go farther together than we ever can alone. And there's, the O in hero the R in hero is ripples our message to spread positive change. And that's because it's our life stories that are what I feel connect us. And it's our duty to share those lessons that we've learned along the way in the service to others. And so it sounds like you've taken some of those lessons, you're sharing those lessons with others, and that's helping others grow, which is fantastic. What's been what's been the biggest challenge that you've faced along the way in kind of that hero's journey, if you will? In the hero's journey, there's always, the dragon to slay or the difficulty to overcome. What would you say is the biggest challenge you faced along the way, Ryan?
The biggest challenge for me is setting boundaries. So it's interesting, right? Because as a psychologist, I talk about boundaries a lot when it comes to mental health and protecting our well-being, right? And reducing burnout, things like that. But, I really love helping people so much that sometimes I'll drop everything to help someone. And in turn, that may not be the most, the best route to take, because then sometimes, people take advantage of that, right? And, it's always best to set those boundaries, and also I have more time with my family when I set those boundaries, right? I have a 2.5-year-old at home. I have a wife, right? So I have a family I need to spend time with, that I want to spend time with as well. So recognizing that, you have to set those boundaries and you can still help and influence others, right? But protecting your time and being mindful and intentional about that is essential.
And I'd say, being a fellow entrepreneur, that it becomes even more challenging. One, you're talking about setting the boundaries because you want to help. So, you have a heart of service and you want to help. And that's one thing. And then on the flip side, or not the flip side, but in adjacent to that is you're also an entrepreneur. So you want to grow your business, you want to expand, you want to maybe say yes to that, speaking opportunity or that training, and maybe it involves travel, maybe it involves, leaving your family, things like that. So it's a balance, right? It's a balance of having to balance all those things as well.
I like to say work-life harmony, not work-life balance, because there's no true balance, I feel, in life. You're not going to be 150% work, 50% personal, right?
Yeah.
But how can those two worlds harmonize with each other? How can they come together so you can be great in both of those domains of your life? But yeah, they have to harmonize together. And in turn, that's how you're going to be able to enhance your overall well-being and, help you live in that purpose.
Yeah, and with a 2.5-year-old, I mean, I remember my daughters, I have 3 daughters, they're all grown now, 20, 23, and 26. But I remember that was my favorite age when they were in that like toddler stage, in that time. And I do remember that I wasn't as present as I should have been at that age. That, I don't really have any regrets in life. I think you learn from every experience. I do feel that when they were that age, that, I was working a lot. I was still doing sports. I played basketball 3 nights a week and, things like that. And so I wasn't as present as I could have been at that age. So I know how important, it is. And I had to learn that the hard way over time. So it's good that you're aware of it, that you're aware of it when, your child's young.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So in our show, we talk about a spark moment. Now, a spark moment, and you kind of alluded to it, whether you knew it or not, but a spark moment is a moment in life where something happens, and then after that action, there's a ripple effect that goes far beyond the initial act. So it could be the mentor talking to you and saying, hey, maybe you should join the military, right? And then you end up going to the military and you learn leadership and it changes the trajectory of your life. Or maybe you impact someone, like one of those interns, you say something and that helps them. So share a story of positive change. It's an example of a spark moment that you've had in your life where it was either someone impacting you or you impacting someone.
That's great. Yeah, let me think about that for a second. I would say when I began speaking, I didn't really recognize the impact that my voice had onto others. So for instance, talking about inclusion at work, I was like, hey, I'm well researched in this area. I did my dissertation on microaggressions. I'm comfortable sharing my story as a Black male, in America. And, I just, hey, let's go out and let's share some information. I remember I did a talk for a large organization. Maybe there was like 5,000 people on the call. It was a virtual call. Thousands of people were on the call. And, I remember, what was that?
So that's a big call. So that's a big
Yeah. So it was a webinar. From across the entire organization, a lot of people joined from all over the world. And, I was able to not just share my experience, on inclusion and work, and talk about research, et cetera, about microaggressions, but also I shared my personal experience as a Black male. You look at me and say, oh, he's a doctor, he has a PhD, right? But me as a Black male, I shared my experience about, police brutality. I shared my experience about me being slammed on the ground, for no apparent reason when I was younger, and, being put in handcuffs just because of the color of my skin. And when I share those experiences, people, they message me and they say, wow, that brought me to tears. Wow, I don't feel alone. Wow, I didn't recognize this was still going on. Wow, that really influences me to do something and make a difference in my community. And that ultimately was significantly impactful because I recognized that sharing my story really impacted others to spark some type of difference, whether that be, looking at their workplace policies to recognize how that may discriminate against women, or people of different religions, right? Or maybe that motivated them to get involved in their community, right? But others would reach out to me and just convey how that significantly impacted their life, just me self-disclosing. And right then and there, I knew that this was, part of my purpose to not only, share, my expertise, my wisdom, but also my experience to spark and influence change in others. So I think that was a I spark moment, that recognized, hey, I got to keep doing this. I need to be more intentional about it.
Yeah, and probably I would say thank you for sharing that, and thank you for, again, without knowing you check the box on the O for hero of opening your heart to the world and being authentic and vulnerable and allowing others to connect with you on a deeper level. Because not just here on the program, but in doing that on that webinar, for example, that's what allowed probably multiple spark moments for others. And one thing about a spark moment that we always say is that oftentimes you never see the effects of that ripple effect. You never know where that goes and how far. And there could be someone that was on that webinar that by virtue of hearing you speak, and this could be anytime you speak, honestly, but by virtue of hearing you speak, that changes something in their life, that leads them to, impact another or do something at work or seek to make change in the workplace or, things like that. So there's probably many more that you don't even realize. And that's the beauty of those, is that, we do them, without any kind of seeking reward. And then, we let God kind of figure it out. and then that's where all the change comes from. So thank you for sharing that. And for getting a little deeper with your story, because I know there's plenty of people listening that will be able to relate to that. We'll be able to relate to similar situations and connect with you on that level. So thank you. Mm-hmm. So as we get towards the end of the program here, Ryan, I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people in the business sector that, that want to learn more about you, want to connect, or, possibly have you in their organization. So how can they connect with you? How can they learn more about you?
Yes, definitely. So first, visit my website, rcwarnerconsulting.com. You can also feel free to add me on LinkedIn at Ryan C. Warner, PhD. You can also add me on all socials at Dr. Ryan C. Warner. If you have trouble finding me, just Google my name, Dr. Ryan C. Warner, and you'll be able to contact me as well. So yeah, if you listen to this podcast and want to reach out and, have any additional questions or any feedback or any thoughts, just say, hey, I heard you on iSpark Change podcast. That'd be great to connect. Okay, perfect. And we'll make sure that we put all that in the show notes. All of that will be down there, all your links and everything, so people will be able to access it easily. Well, one final question here, Dr. Ryan, as we value your thoughts and opinions as a social impact leader, what we call a social impact leader, because our goal at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people over the next few years with our community and our future social impact social media platform that is in the works. And we know we can't do it alone. We know we need the help of impactful leaders like yourself to help show people the way, because many people feel, as I once did, that they're too small to make a difference, that they're only one person. So we value your thoughts and opinions, as I said. So I want you to peer into the future, peer into our iSpark Change crystal ball here, and tell me, what can the world become if everyone starts believing that they can impact the future and be a leader? Wow, that's a powerful, just thought. I feel that we would live in a world that is more kind, a world that we can all work together, towards a certain goal, a world with less hate, less discrimination, more inclusivity. And I feel that, we will also live in a world in which more people are fulfilled if they're able to walk in that purpose. So those are my thoughts about that.
All beautiful things. That sounds like a beautiful world. So hopefully we will get there soon enough. Well, thank you for taking your time to share your heart and wisdom with our audience. Ryan, you came in, you over-delivered, as I knew you would, and your desire to be impactful is evident. You're filled with passion and drive, and you lead with a heart of service, which tells me you're going to continue to have success in all facets of life. And this is only the beginning of your time as a social impact hero.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Impact Heroes, it's our stories that connect us all, and we loved hearing Dr. Ryan C. Warner's today. Dr. Ryan C. Warner, you're not only an inspiring and amazing human being, but you truly are an iSpark Change social impact hero. We'll see you all next time.
Do you want Rick to speak at your event? Here is what others have to say.
Did not know his story, and it was so inspirational, and his presence on stage, his authenticity was just incredible.
Absolutely loved his performance. Made me feel some type of way.
If you're looking for a speaker for your next event,
hire Rick. I promise you this, you will not be disappointed.
Visit rickcornelis.com to book him today.
Remember, Impact Heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the iSpark Change podcast.